Rain on the window, 3 in the morning. A phone buzzing on the nightstand, screen lighting up the ceiling in cold blue. You don't answer right away. You never do. You let it ring twice. Because the man calling taught you that answering too fast makes you look scared, and looking scared is how you end up in a trunk. Get dressed, the voice says. No hello. Never a hello. Bring the black bag. Meet me at the warehouse on Ferry Street. The line goes dead. You sit on the edge of the bed for a long moment, staring at your hands. 3 months ago, these were the hands of a man who fixed cars for a living. Now they're the hands of a man who does whatever Dritton tells him to do, and doesn't ask questions, because the last person who asked questions is a name nobody says out loud anymore. You get dressed in the dark. You don't turn on the light. You've learned that habit without anyone teaching it to you. Some habits just grow into you, like moss on a stone left too long in the same place. The bag is under the floorboard. You lift it out. It's heavier than it should be for its size, and you don't look inside. You never look inside. That's rule number 1, the only rule Dritton ever wrote down for you, though he never actually wrote anything. He just looked at you the first week you worked for him and said, "You don't look inside the bag. You don't ask what's in the bag. The bag is not your business. Your business is getting the bag where it needs to go." You drive through empty streets. The city looks different at 3 a.m., like it's holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do with it. This is your life now. 6 months ago, you would have called this insane. You had a mortgage payment due on the 15th, a daughter who needed braces, and a job that paid you $11 an hour to lie underneath strangers' cars. Then a man walked into your garage with a black BMW that made a sound it shouldn't have been making, and he watched you work on it for 40 minutes without saying a word. And when you were done, he handed you $500 for what should have cost $80. "You're good with your hands," he said, "and you don't talk much. I like that." Rain on the window, 3 in the morning. A phone buzzing on the nightstand, screen lighting up the ceiling in cold blue. You don't answer right away. You never do. You let it ring twice. Because the man calling taught you that answering too fast makes you look scared, and looking scared is how you end up in a trunk. Get dressed, the voice says. No hello. Never a hello. Bring the black bag. Meet me at the warehouse on Ferry Street. The line goes dead. You sit on the edge of the bed for a long moment, staring at your hands. 3 months ago, these were the hands of a man who fixed cars for a living. Now they're the hands of a man who does whatever Dritton tells him to do, and doesn't ask questions, because the last person who asked questions is a name nobody says out loud anymore. You get dressed in the dark. You don't turn on the light. You've learned that habit without anyone teaching it to you. Some habits just grow into you, like moss on a stone left too long in the same place. The bag is under the floorboard. You lift it out. It's heavier than it should be for its size, and you don't look inside. You never look inside. That's rule number 1, the only rule Dritton ever wrote down for you, though he never actually wrote anything. He just looked at you the first week you worked for him and said, "You don't look inside the bag. You don't ask what's in the bag. The bag is not your business. Your business is getting the bag where it needs to go." You drive through empty streets. The city looks different at 3 a.m., like it's holding its breath, waiting to see what you'll do with it. This is your life now. 6 months ago, you would have called this insane. You had a mortgage payment due on the 15th, a daughter who needed braces, and a job that paid you $11 an hour to lie underneath strangers' cars. Then a man walked into your garage with a black BMW that made a sound it shouldn't have been making, and he watched you work on it for 40 minutes without saying a word. And when you were done, he handed you $500 for what should have cost $80. "You're good with your hands," he said, "and you don't talk much. I like that." Your chest tightens. Not fear exactly. Something closer to hope trying to fight its way past fear. "What do you need me to do?" Dritton stops walking. He looks at you the way a man looks at a horse he's deciding whether to bet on. There's a shipment coming from Duras. 50 kilos. It needs to move from the port to a house in Paterson without anyone noticing. I need a driver nobody suspects. A man with a family, a mortgage, a daughter in braces. He almost smiles. You look like the last man on earth who'd be moving 50 kilos of anything. The word sits in the air between you. 50 kilos. You've delivered bags before. Small ones. You told yourself they could have been anything. Documents, cash, jewelry. You let yourself believe that, because believing it let you sleep at night. You can't believe that anymore. Your hands are shaking on the wheel 3 nights later, driving a rented box truck up Route 21, a GPS blinking a route Dritton's men mapped out for you, avoiding every known checkpoint. Behind you, in the cargo hold, sit crates marked as restaurant equipment. They are not restaurant equipment. Every headlight behind you feels like it's followed you for too long. Every siren in the distance, and there are always sirens somewhere in this city, sounds like it's coming for you specifically. You think about your daughter. Her name is Alira. She's 11. She has your wife's laugh and your mother's stubborn chin. And if you get pulled over tonight, if this truck gets searched, you will never see either of their faces again, outside of a visiting room with bulletproof glass between you. Your phone buzzes. A text, no name attached, just a number you've memorized without meaning to. Everything good? You type back with one hand, eyes on the road. Good. 10 more minutes. House on Getty Avenue, yellow door. You exhale, and it comes out shakier than you expect. This is the moment you understand, really understand, not the abstract idea you'd been telling yourself, that you are no longer a mechanic who does the occasional favor. You are a trafficker. The word tastes like metal in your mouth. You make the delivery. 2 men take the crates without a word. One of them looks at you for a second too long, the way a butcher looks at meat, deciding its worth. You don't like that look. You will remember that look. Dritton pays you $18,000 in a gym bag the next day, in cash, at a diner booth, where the waitress knows not to ask questions about the men who sit in the back corner. $18,000. More than 4 months at the garage. You should feel relief. Instead, you feel like you just sold something you can't buy back. Weeks pass. The money changes things faster than you expect. Alira gets her braces. You catch up on the mortgage, then get ahead of it. Your wife, Marina, asks fewer questions than she should, because some part of her, the part that grew up watching her own father disappear for stretches of time, and come back with cash, and no explanation, already suspects, and has decided not to know for certain. You tell yourself this is temporary. One more job, then another, then a bigger one. That's the trick of it. Nobody drags you deeper. You walk in yourself, one step at a time, each step justified by the one before it. Dritton starts trusting you with more than deliveries. He brings you into rooms you shouldn't be in. You start hearing names. Besnik, who runs the docks. Agron, who handles the money that needs to stop looking like drug money and start looking like restaurant revenue. And a name spoken only in careful whispers, a name that makes even Dritton's jaw tighten when it comes up. Zeph. Zeph is the man above Dritton. Nobody has told you that directly. You've pieced it together from the way conversations change when his name enters a room, the way men who don't flinch at gunfire flinch at the mention of him. You meet him for the first time on a night that starts as ordinary and ends as anything but. The house is in the hills outside the city, the kind of house that costs more than everyone at your old garage will earn in their lifetimes combined. Marble floors, a wine cellar bigger than your first apartment, and at the center of it, in a leather chair that looks like a throne dressed up as furniture, sits Zeph Gashi. He's older than Dritton, maybe 65, with white hair combed back, and the stillness of a man who has never once had to raise his voice to be obeyed. When he looks at you, you feel it in your spine. So this is the mechanic, Zeph says, not quite smiling. Dritton speaks well of you. Dritton does not speak well of many people. Thank you, you say, and your voice comes out smaller than you want it to. Don't thank me, Zeph says. Thanking a man for noticing you is a habit for people who don't yet understand what being noticed by me actually costs. The room goes quiet. Even Dritton, standing beside you, doesn't move. I have a problem, Zeph continues. A man who used to work for us has decided he'd rather work for the FBI instead. He's been testifying actually, next month, in a federal courthouse, about things that would put a great many people I care about in a cage for the rest of their lives. Your stomach turns to ice. I need him found before he takes the stand, Zeph says. And I've been told you're the man nobody suspects. You feel the floor tilt beneath you, even though it doesn't move at all. Here's a question I need you to answer honestly, because your answer says more about you than you might want it to. Who would you trust more in this moment? The organization that made you rich and gave your daughter a life you couldn't have given her alone, or the FBI, who would lock you away the second they learned your name? Write just one word, Mafia, or FBI. I want to see what the comments say. You don't sleep that night. You lie next to Marina, who breathes evenly beside you, unaware that her husband has just been asked to hunt down a human being, and you stare at the ceiling and try to find the version of yourself that would say no. You can't find him. He disappeared somewhere between the first $500 and the $18,000 in a gym bag. The next morning, Dritton hands you a photograph. A man named Victor Hoxa, mid-40s, tired eyes, the face of someone who has spent the last year looking over his shoulder and knowing it wasn't enough. He's under witness protection, Dritton says. But protection isn't perfect. We have someone inside who feeds us pieces. You're going to help us put the pieces together. That's all. Nothing more. You find him. You tell us where he is. Someone else does the rest. You want to believe that's a smaller crime than it sounds like. You want to believe that finding a man and someone else doing the rest are two different things, morally, like there's a wall between them thick enough to keep your hands clean. There isn't. You know there isn't. You do it anyway. For 3 weeks, you become someone you don't recognize, patient, careful, methodical. You trace utility bills routed through shell addresses. You watch a diner in a town 2 hours north for 6 days straight, learning the rhythm of a stranger's protected life. What time he walks his dog, which grocery store he uses, which pew he sits in at Sunday Mass under a name that isn't his. You feel sick every single day, and every single day, you go back. On the 7th day, you find him. You don't tell yourself what will happen next. You just report the address, the routine, the pattern, the way Dritton asked you to. 2 days later, you hear that Victor Hoxa's testimony has been postponed indefinitely. Nobody tells you what that means. Nobody has to. You start drinking more than you used to. Marina notices. She doesn't ask why. She asks something worse. Are we in danger? She says one night, after Elira has gone to bed, her voice barely above a whisper, like even the walls of your own house might be listening now. Are you in danger? You want to lie to her. You've gotten good at lying, to yourself mostly, but the skill transfers. Instead, for the first time in months, you tell her something true. I don't know, you say. I think I might have made a mistake I can't take back. She doesn't cry. She's stronger than that, always has been. She just looks at you with an expression you've never seen on her before. Not anger, not fear exactly. Something closer to grief, like she's mourning the version of you she married before you ever walked into that garage that day and decided $500 was worth more than your own future. Then get us out, she says, before it's you who disappears. You don't tell her that men like Dritton don't let people simply walk away. You don't tell her that the price of leaving is usually higher than the price of staying. You just hold her, and for the first time since this all began, you let yourself cry, quietly, in the dark, where no one, not even her, can see your face. Getting out isn't a conversation. Getting out is a war you fight without anyone knowing you've declared it. You start small. You keep records Dritton doesn't know you're keeping. Dates, names, amounts, routes. Not because you plan to go to the police. You're too deep for that. Too many of your own fingerprints are on too many things now. You keep them because some instinct in you, the same instinct that used to tell you which engine part was about to fail before it failed, tells you that information is the only currency that might buy you a future. Then Besnik, the man who runs the docks, the one who always looked at you a second too long, like meat being weighed, starts asking Dritton questions about you. Why does the mechanic know so much? Why does Zeph trust him so fast? Whether a man with a wife and a daughter is a liability waiting to happen. You don't hear this from Dritton. You hear it from a woman named Anna, who works the diner where the money exchanges happen, and hears more than anyone gives her credit for, and who has taken a liking to you the way people sometimes take a liking to someone they can tell is drowning. Besnik wants you gone, she tells you, refilling your coffee, not looking at you while she says it, like she's talking about the weather. Not fired. Gone. Your blood runs cold. Why would you tell me this? She shrugs. Because you still look at your phone like it's your daughter calling and not your boss. Most of these men stopped looking at their phones that way years ago. I don't want to watch that stop too. The next 48 hours are the longest of your life. You go to Dritton directly. A risk, because going around the chain of command is its own kind of confession, and you tell him what you heard. You watch his face for the flicker of truth. You've learned to read him over the months, the small tells, the way his jaw sets when he's deciding whether to lie to you. Besnik doesn't make decisions about who stays and who goes, Dritten says finally. That's not his call. Then whose call is it? Dritten doesn't answer right away, and in the silence, you understand. It's Zef's call. It was always going to be Zef's call. I'll talk to him, Dritten says, and for a moment, just a moment, you see something in his face that looks almost like guilt, like a man who brought another man into a life he knows doesn't end well, and has never once let himself think about that until right now. Why would you help me? You ask. Because you remind me of who I was, he says quietly. Before I stopped being able to leave. That sentence sits in your chest like a stone for the rest of the night. 2 nights later, you're called back to the house in the hills. Just you. No Dritten this time. And that absence feels like the loudest warning you've ever received. Zef is waiting in the same leather chair, a glass of Rocky on the table beside him, untouched. I hear there are concerns about you, he says, without preamble. I've done everything you've asked. Yes, Zef agrees. You have. That's actually the problem. You've done everything asked of you, and you've done it well. And men who do things well eventually start asking themselves whether they still want to be asked. You say nothing. There's nothing safe to say. Besnik thinks you're becoming a risk, Zef continues. I think Besnik is worried you're becoming better at this than he is, and that frightens small men more than betrayal ever could. He studies you for a long moment, but I've learned something in 30 years of this life. The men who start looking for exits are either about to become informants or about to become legends. I need to know which one you are. Your heart is a drum in your ears. I'm not going to the police, you say. I have a daughter. I have too much to lose. Everyone has too much to lose, Zef says. Until the moment they don't. He leans forward. I'm going to give you a choice, mechanic. And I want you to understand there is no version of this where you walk away with nothing changed. There is only a version where you walk away, or a version where you don't walk at all. Besnik has been skimming, Zef says, for 2 years. Small amounts, careful, patient, the kind of theft that's designed never to be noticed. He has hidden it well. But you found things about routes and shipments that most men in your position never think to look for. I want you to find out how much he's taken, and where it's gone. Your mouth goes dry. You want me to investigate Besnik. I want you to earn your exit, Zef says. Bring me proof, and I'll let you go. Truly go. Back to your garage, your daughter, your quiet little life. I give you my word, and my word, unlike most men's, has never once been broken. And if I say no, Zef's expression doesn't change, and somehow that's worse than if it had. Then you continue being useful to me for as long as you're useful, and we never discuss the subject of leaving again. You think of Marina's face. You think of Elira asking why Daddy seems so tired all the time now. You think of Anna's warning, of Besnik's eyes weighing you like meat, of Victor Hawks's photograph and the 2 words, postponed indefinitely, that you will carry in your chest for the rest of your life. I'll do it, you say. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't the kind of story that lets anyone walk away clean. There are people living exactly this life right now, in cities you'd never guess, hiding in plain sight the way you'd hide a scar under a long sleeve. If stories like this, the ones that pull back the curtain on worlds most people will never see, are the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. There are a lot more files left to open. You spend the next 2 weeks becoming a ghost inside your own organization. You learn things about accounting you never thought you'd need, how cash gets layered through fake invoices at 3 restaurants and a car wash, how numbers that don't add up get smoothed over by a bookkeeper who's either terrified or complicit, possibly both. Besnik has been skimming through the car wash. Small, almost invisible, $9,000 a month redirected through a fake maintenance contract to an account under his sister's name. Over 2 years, it adds up to almost $200,000. You gather it carefully, photographs of documents, screenshots of transfers you weren't supposed to have access to, a paper trail thin enough to slip past most eyes but complete enough to hang a man. And then, 3 days before you're set to bring it to Zef, Besnik finds out. You don't know how. Maybe the bookkeeper talked. Maybe you weren't as careful as you thought. All you know is that you come home one evening to find your front door unlocked. A door you always lock, always, without fail. And your stomach drops through the floor before you even step inside. Marina, you call out. Silence answers you. Elira? Nothing. You run through the house, room by room, your heart pounding so hard it hurts, until you find a note on the kitchen table, weighted down by a single bullet. You have something that belongs to me. I have something that belongs to you. Let's talk before this becomes a story neither of us wants told. You don't call Dritten. You don't call Zeph. In this moment, with your family missing and a bullet sitting on your kitchen table like a period at the end of a sentence, you understand something with total clarity for the first time in this entire nightmare. The organization was never going to protect you. It was only ever going to use you until using you stopped being convenient. You call the one number you swore to yourself you'd never call. A woman answers. Calm, professional, careful. Special Agent Reyes. Your voice shakes as you speak. I need help. My family. They took my family. There's a pause on the other end, and then something in her tone shifts, sharper now, focused. Who is this? You've been building a case on Zeph Gashi for 3 years, you say, the words tumbling out before fear can stop them. I can give you everything. Names, routes, money, all of it. But you have to help me get my family back first. Another pause. Longer this time. Where are you right now? What happens over the next 6 hours is the fastest, most terrifying 6 hours of your entire life. Federal agents, moving in ways you didn't know federal agents could move. A coordinated operation built from nothing in real time, because a scared man with a spreadsheet and a bullet on his kitchen table just handed them the missing piece of a 3-year investigation. They find Marina and Elira in a house 11 miles away, unharmed, terrified, held by 2 of Besnick's men, who never expected federal agents to arrive before Zeph's people did. Elira is shaking so hard when they carry her out that it takes 20 minutes before she can speak. Marina doesn't let go of her the entire ride to the hospital, not even for a second, not even when a nurse asks her to. You are not there for the reunion. You are in a small gray room being asked question after question by Agent Reyes, laying out, piece by piece, name by name, the entire architecture of an organization you spent a year building yourself into. You tell them about Dritten, and your voice catches, because somewhere in this whole ruined year, the man who recruited you into all of this also became, without either of you meaning for it to happen, something close to a friend, the closest thing to one you had left. You tell them about Besnick, and you don't feel guilty at all. You tell them about Zeph, and the room goes very, very quiet, because you are giving them exactly what they have spent 3 years trying to build a case for. If you testify, Reyes says finally, we can offer protection, relocation, a new start for your family, somewhere none of this can reach you. You think about the garage, the $500, the $18,000 in a gym bag, Victor Hawks's photograph, and the 2 words that still visit you in your sleep. I'll testify, you say, on one condition. I want to look him in the eye when I do. The trial takes place 8 months later, in a federal courthouse with more security than you've ever seen in your life. You've been living under a different name in a different state, in a small house with a garage out back where you fix cars again, quietly, the way you did before any of this began, before a black BMW pulled in and changed the entire shape of your life. Marina sits 3 rows back, in the gallery, close enough to see but far enough that no one connects her face to yours in any court document. Elira is at home with a family friend, 13 now, still flinching sometimes at loud noises, still healing in ways that will take years, maybe a lifetime, to finish healing. Zeph sits at the defense table in a suit that costs more than your old garage made in a month, and when you take the stand and your eyes meet his for the first time since that night in the leather chair, he doesn't look angry. He looks almost, and this surprises you more than anything else in this entire year has, proud. Legend, he mouths, so quietly only you could possibly catch it, and you realize, with a chill that runs the length of your spine, that he told you exactly what he thought you might become, the very first day, and never once expected to be right. You testify for 6 hours across 2 days. Every route, every payment, every name, every crate marked as something it never was. When it's over, when the final gavel falls 11 weeks later, and Zeph Gashi is sentenced to 31 years in federal prison, you don't feel like celebrating. You feel like you finally, after everything, get to exhale. You would do the math 100 different ways, lying awake in your new house in your new town under your new name, and you would never fully forgive yourself for Victor Hawksa, whose fate you never confirmed, and prayed every single night was better than the one your imagination kept offering you. But you would also watch Elira graduate high school under a name that isn't the one she was born with, and you would hold Marina's hand at that ceremony and think, for the first time in years, that maybe some doors, once you're brave enough to walk through them, really do close behind you for good. Some choices cost more than money ever could, and some choices, the hardest ones, the ones that terrify you the most in the moment you make them, are the only ones that ever let you find your way back home. So here's my question for you, and I actually want to know the answer. If you were in this exact position, deep enough in that there's no clean way out, with your family's safety the only thing left to protect, would you have made the same choice? Or would you have stayed loyal to the people who made you rich, even knowing what it might cost you? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one.